Hey there, guys. This is Slamsaron, aka YouTube's Tasuke, and this show has recently ended. I say recently, but I think it's been probably a couple of months or maybe a month. But I'm gonna review a little show called Tales of Zestiria: The Cross, an anime adaptation on the Tales of Zestiria game with a little bit of Berseria in it, and by a little I mean very little. I'll go into it as we go along. But I wanted to wait until the entire series was done before I reviewed. I wasn't gonna do it like by the arc or anything like that, or by season. I just wanted to review the entire thing in one big doohickey. Though, if you want to hear my thoughts as the show was kind of going on, for the second season we were a little later on it, but on my podcast, the Skit Style BBS podcast, I actually talked about both seasons along with my friend and fellow host Stan, also known as Dream Sword. And for the first season, we actually got Chris Niosi, Kirbopher, the voice of Dezel, in both the game and the anime, to review the first season with us. Unfortunately, we chose not to bring him back for our review of the second season, and you're going to hear a bit about this as well in my review. But the reason why we chose not to bring him in was because, honestly, Stan and I's opinion of the second season were not as high as everyone else's seemed to be. From what I've heard, people didn't really like the ending as much. It seemed like overall people seemed to like the show. Personally, I don't hate it. I did take note of some stuff that I feel like was weaker in this adaptation than in the game. I do think there was some stuff that the show did better as well, though. And Stan, frankly, did not like it at all. And so we felt like it would have been kind of rude and mean to like have Chris Niosi come back while he listened to us basically shit all over this show he was in. I mean, I know he doesn't have like direct control or anything, but it's like, we didn't want to like be jerks, So that's why we didn't get him back for the review of the second season. But I'll have a link to both parts, or both episodes or whatever, because they're on YouTube, because we put the first one on YouTube, and I'm like, okay, well, now I have to put the second one on YouTube too. On the Mizuho channel, there'll be links in the description for both parts. So if you want to listen to some back and forth, you can do that. But this one is just me, good old Ryan, talking about this here anime. I actually took notes, and that I did kind of by season. I have more notes for season 2 than I do season 1, because I sort of did like a mini Garo situation where I started doing it by episode. Yeah, and this was also, just real quick, a first for the Tales series in terms of North America. This was the first time the series had ever been simulcast in North America, because it was licensed by Funimation, and also got the broadcast dub, so that was definitely some nice treatment for this series, and it just kind of shows how big the series has become. Still no DVD release or home release or whatever as of this recording. I'm recording it on the 6th of June at like 3 in the morning. But so far, no like home release. I imagine probably DVD Blu-ray combo pack. I'm regardless of, I am gonna get it. Like, I know I kind of, built up this like, oh, I hate this show kind of thing. No, that's not true. Like, get that out of your head. I'm definitely gonna buy this. But, well, I guess I should just go on and continue before I get a little too ahead of myself. I watched the show subtitled because since I played the game English dubbed, I wanted to have sort of a different experience. They got the voice actors back for all they could. Obviously, Gramps' voice actor, he passed away before the game came out. And Lila's voice actress, she died after the game came out, sometime after, so she was replaced. I believe she's voiced by the same chick who does Sakura in Fate Stay Night. So I think she did a good job. I didn't really have any like preconceived idea of how Lila should sound in Japanese. If anything, if I were to ever play Zestiria in Japanese, I probably would expect her to sound more like Zestiria the Cross than I would her original actress, who was Hikari in Strawberry Panic, among other things. But and I heard for the English dub, um, since Robbie Damon was sick, because on Facebook he would talk about like how he has like strep and whatnot, so he had to like sort of take a little break from voice acting. I believe Bryce Papenbrook filled in, which is kind of funny because they sound pretty similar to me, and so uh, definitely pretty good voice matching, I imagine. I haven't actually watched it. I watched a little bit of the English dub just because I wanted to hear Saray say Tales of Zestiria the Cross in the episode preview, which they used the skits for, which I think was actually kind of cool. Um, so yeah, I guess I'll just go into it. It starts off as sort of like a straight adaptation, but by like the last couple of episodes, it sort of shifts on to like a new sort of thing. And in the second season, it's almost completely different. Um, but we'll get into that as we continue onward. And like I said, I have notes. Firstly, I think this is worth addressing. Alicia seemed to have more focus in the story, in the than in the game, and she had like natural. She had more natural resonance with the Seraphim. I feel like this is sort of them trying to sort of make up for the Alicia thing still. I don't know if I necessarily. I don't know if we necessarily needed her to have that much. It almost kind of seemed like they were trying to make her a stronger character. And I don't mean like stronger as in like a better character. I mean stronger as in emotionally a stronger character, which I feel like, I don't know, like if you remember in my Zestiria the game review, I didn't really like how Alicia was sort of like constantly playing the I'm inexperienced card and being sort of weak-minded. That being said, you know, it's good to have characters who aren't mentally strong and don't really know a lot of things. You know, it's perfectly okay to have that. But I don't know if I needed her to improve from that this early. Um, but that's like, in this, the first season is sort of like, I think I'd say maybe the first season was probably a little bit better, and that one I actually kind of watched as it came out. For the second season, I was just doing other stuff, and so I got kind of busy, and I didn't really watch it as it came out, so I had to watch it afterwards. And Funimation's new player wasn't really entirely pleased with their old player was, it worked fine, and honestly, I kind of liked how, I don't know if they still did this when the show was new, but I kind of liked how, at least for me, when with a simulcast show, they didn't play the ads for like the week that it came out, like the day it came out, like it wouldn't play any ads. I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. I like that. And then like if you missed it, well, sorry, you have to deal with the ads. You know, that makes sense to me. That being said, because I had to watch the second season within a week, I and also I didn't want to have to deal with the ads constantly breaking my progress since I'm binge watching a show. I actually did the free trial for Funimation Now and then canceled it right after I was finished. But I'm still gonna get it on DVD, so I guess that makes up for it. um, Visually, I thought it looked nice. You know, it looked like it came. They just took like the anime cutscenes, like, I mean not literally, but like it looked like you could have taken the anime and throw it into the game as cutscenes. It's still Ufotable doing the art, and as far as I know, it's like the same people who maybe did the anime cutscenes. Like basically, it looks like it came straight from the game, and I like that. It's very pretty. Like Ufotable is such a great anime studio. They do a really good job of like making high quality, visually stunning anime. Um, the fights are sort of like you could say like maybe Dragon Ball Z. You could also say Fate Stay Night because of all the jumping and flying around and the use of weapons. Uh, they're very fun to watch. There's actually because episodes 5 and 6 of the first season are they switch over to Tales of Berseria, likely for promotion for the game because like the game was coming out like that week or like the week of episode 6, and so it recounts they recount like the beginning of when Velvet's in Titania and whatnot. And this was also the first time we got to hear some of the English voices, so it was kind of interesting getting to hear some of them. Christina V and whatnot as Velvet, and of course Monica Rial as Saris. But and I think episode 5 when Velvet's beating up the guard, she even does like the hammer slam thing that Vegeta always did in like the Namek saga of Dragon Ball Z, and that stood out to me. I thought that was kind of fun. She does it. She does it on like someone's back, whereas Vegeta usually did it on someone's head, just to kind of show how brutal he is. But it was kind of, I thought, I took note of that. I don't know. Maybe I'll include that in the description as well. But um, and sort of a negative, but going back to sort of how the anime kind of looks like you could take various cutscenes from it and put it into the game as like alternate cutscenes. They use the music from the game in this, and it was very noticeable in this first season. In the second season, I don't think it bothered me that much. I don't know if they used it more sparingly or if they actually got some original music, but I felt like the tone and pace of the music kind of clashed with the anime. Uh, because if you ask me, in anime, music is more used for background than anything, than more so than in games. Because I feel like in games you're gonna kind of hear it a bit more because you might be talking to people or what. I don't know. Like it just seems like, to put it simply, video game music seems to be a little bit louder than anime music, in my opinion. In certain aspects. And because of that, it just stood out. Like they used like town music for like scenes and whatnot. Like they used like the proper music. I just felt like it clashed with the presentation and the general volume mix, because the music was kind of a little bit louder, in my opinion. Um, for the first episode, in Funimation's version, I know also Daisuke also uh, simulcast the show with a different subs. The first episode, the subtitles didn't match some of the terminology. Like instead of Celestial Record, it was like the book of uh, Seraphic Theology, or I don't remember. Um, so they didn't match like the English localization of the game, though they did fix it in like the next episodes after, and it continued onward into the second season. So it was probably just from a standpoint of they wanted to kind of get the that first episode out quickly, because apparently they dubbed it like pretty early too, and then they went back and dubbed the rest. But it was still like, I guess, noteworthy. On some level, I was almost kind of expecting Funimation to kind of go about their own terminology for the sub, and then for the dub go with the English game localization, like Celestial Record and the Demon Fangs and whatnot. Because to me that kind of makes sense, because I don't know, it seems like with anime, in terms of dub versus subs, as opposed to in like regular like Hollywood movies, where the subtitles are more for necessity rather than like for stylistic differences, whereas in anime it's like the subscript is different from the dub script, just because different languages. Same with movies as well, like foreign movies with an English dub and whatnot. You know what I mean. I imagine it's probably going to be fixed in the home release, maybe even on the I don't think they're going to fix it in the streaming. They might have fixed it, because obviously Funimation, they basically like redid their entire website as well as their player and whatnot. It seems like I don't know, maybe it's just because it was just for this specific show, but it seemed like the dub episodes were available to me as a free user even before I did the Funimation Now thing. Obviously with Funimation Now, they gave me the dub, which I always switched. It defaulted to the dub. I'm probably gonna watch the dub when it comes out on DVD, and I can kind of watch it at my own pace. But yeah, and the visual quality was decent. The subtitle quality didn't look. I noticed a lot of websites are really struggling with subtitle quality lately. Like not talking about translation or even writing, just how they look. Even Crunchyroll is sort of like boogering up on that, but whatever. Um, with the Berseria episodes, especially going at it from or coming at it from someone who didn't really know Berseria at the time. Obviously now I know Berseria, but I liked how those episodes kind of clashed with the general color scheme of the Zestiria episodes, because Zestiria is really colorful and bright and vibrant and pure, whereas Berseria was a lot darker. And this it takes place on Titania, which is like a giant like prison island, so like there's a lot of gray and deep blues, and when they're inside, there's a lot of like dark browns and sort of reds and like sort of like brownish and like yellows because of flames and whatnot. So color wise, it was kind of cool to sort of see the contrast. In episode 11, the fight choreography with Rose and Alicia against the soldiers, that was pretty cool, especially Rose's kicks going along with sort of like the fighting. The action in this show is actually really good. I'm glad they sort of went with a more Fate Stay Night / Dragon Ball, like more crazy fighting. Like it's almost shonen. Like it's not like some other fantasy anime where most of the crazy stuff comes from like magic spells and whatnot. I felt like it was just really cool seeing like sort of like the flashy, like when I think it's Sorey and Miklia are fighting Lunar and the capital of Highland, where like they're doing all those jumps on the buildings and whatnot. And that was just really cool. Episode 12 is where I think the final episode of the first season, as I feel like that's sort of where they started to deviate more of the story. You can maybe say a little bit near the end of 11, but it was mostly 12, I think. I guess the only other thing I can note about season 1, I know I'm not doing a big recap of the story, but frankly, I don't remember too much about the first season's story. It's mostly on par, I think. Alicia, I'll go into this sort of like near the end, but I'll save it then. The opening theme song "Kaze no Uta" by Flo is awesome. It feels like even though it's Flo also did Burn in Berseria, it feels like it's Kaze no Uta is a Zestiria song, and I feel like it fits very well with Zestiria. And I honestly like it a lot better than White Light, which I know is not going to surprise anybody. And Calling by Fauna, the ending, the first ending theme, it was pretty decent. But yeah, and it was pretty cool, and this first season was nice. They kind of did a little bit of a red herring at the end, where it seemed like Sorey was getting corrupted by the Malevolence. And it's like, oh, are they going to go that route? They do not. For the second season, my first note is about the opening and ending themes again. I believe I think it's called Illusion by Minami. It's a different singer. It's a female singer. It sounds pretty good. I like it. It's pretty dope. The ending theme is a song called Innocence by Flo. So Flo came back for the ending theme. I sort of like it. Kind of goes along with sort of the with Kaze no Uta's styling a little bit, where it sounds a little medieval, I guess. I like the beginning part where they do the flash of the character and it's like and of course sometimes they'll use it in like near episode endings where you hear the the only time this worked against it was near, I think, like the second to last episode where they played it, and then they started going into like the other parts where the vocals started coming in, and then they would go back to the beginning part. But then when the actual ending started, it did like and then it went back to like the little slow part, because that's just part of the natural song. And so that was kind of weird. It was cool for like a little bit until it went back to like the smaller parts. But it's a dope song. I've been kind of in a flow mood lately. I think it's because I've been watching Code Geass a little bit, so I got to hear colors again. But yeah, they were nice. They felt unique and refreshing, as noted in my notes. The next couple of episodes focus on Rose a little bit. She's shown struggling and regretting over her assassin job, which, yeah, it's an interesting like character development, but I felt like it kind of went against what we were led to believe about her, because in the game she was kind of strong. She I think there were some hints that, like, yeah, she didn't really like what she was doing. It was one of those things where, like, she doesn't like what she was doing, but she knows she has to do it. And it kind of makes it seem like she's suffering more than we were led to believe. For all I know, she could have been suffering more. It's actually, obviously it's been a while since I played Zestiria, but from what I remembered, what stood out to me was more of like her sort of big sister kind of mentality. And I feel like as a character, Rose's function is to be the support for Saray, because it's sort of the mindset of like, Saray is the person who always made people feel better, and in this show he does that as well. But then, like, what happens when the person who makes you feel better all the time starts to feel bad? Who makes them feel better? And I feel like Rose fills that role for Saray, and that's because why, frankly, I think she's a better heroine for Saray, or a better match. I feel like she complements Saray a bit better, whereas Alicia, in the anime, they try to make her compliment Saray a little bit more, just because of her like sudden extra passion, which she does have a little bit of passion. But I don't know. To me, it just kind of comes across more like they're a team. But and I feel like, honestly, I feel like this whole Alicia thing, I feel like it was handled better in the anime than it was in the game overall. She still leaves the group. She comes back at the end for the final boss, quote unquote, with held off. It's still held off. But I feel like letting us see her perspective while she's doing her thing, and letting her stay in Highland while Saray and the group go to Rolance, I think that was actually a great idea. They should have done that, to where like she sticks with the group for a little while longer, and then when they decide they're going to go to the other country that's warring against Highland, Alicia's all like, "Oh, I should stay here and, take care of affairs here and have my own team like Schiller and Ian." I think that was actually the best way to handle it, because they're both kind of tackling two different sides of the same thing. And two, I think it's important to let us kind of focus on Alicia for a little bit exclusively, then go back to Saray, kind of like in Tales of Rebirth, where like they didn't do this much, but you mainly play as Veg, but occasionally you do like a Claire thing and experience something from her. I think that was actually a perfect way to do it. Like, that's how I would have done it, especially if like you actually got to have Schiller and Ian in your party, because Ian's got the bow and arrow, and of course Schiller's got the sword. So it's like, okay, there you go. I think it's kind of funny how, going back to the first season, that scene where like they're all riding on the horse and they're having their pillow talk. Like, it felt so like, we don't need no man kind of. I don't know how to say it without sounding offensive, so I'm not going to go any further. But you know what I mean. It was kind of like a pillow talk. It was kind of funny. Moving on to the next character. I'm going it's entirely off of my notes, so you're gonna have to forgive me if I kind of jump from point to point. But Dezel's backstory, it made more sense. But it's still kind of vague. I felt like it made more sense than in the game. How it was more kind of selfish, I think. And how he was kind of sort of like thrusting his and Brad's dream onto Rose. And I felt like it was a little more palpable, I think. But I'm also glad that he still dies. I know it's going to sound terrible, but I think it's important. I think it's good for the story to have do his thingy. I don't know. I guess I don't know. I'm all for keeping characters, but and I already touched on this earlier, how like it honestly felt like with Alicia going back to her, they were kind of trying to please the fans a bit. Like I said, I feel like honestly they handled her departure a lot better than in the game, because I felt like she left too early, and then they gave her like a breakthrough moment where, like, it was almost like this is probably what if they had kept her and like let her have a breakthrough moment where it's like, I don't want to do this anymore, and then she left. That would have been awesome. That would have been perfect, I think. But Rose, she has like this acceptance of like doing her assassin thing and killing people. Um, they kind of try to give it a bit more flavor to it by like making it feel like some sort of like personal ideal thing with a bit of hint of Velvet's revenge thingy, instead of sort of like the in order to make an omelet you have to break a few eggs kind of mentality. Um, it's an interesting development, but again, it kind of clashes with that's the main thing that I think this show kind of messed up on. They gave us some developments that, while interesting, kind of went against what we were led to believe about these characters. Um, are they wrong? Maybe not, because I feel like this is stuff that they would have felt, or maybe we just missed it because Zestiria, they seemed to think it was a good idea to give us all the cool character dialogue to let us get to know them in the side quests. So if you don't do them, you don't get to know these characters that well. Thankfully, Berseria kind of fixed that with the skits and just in general. So again, it was an interesting development, but I felt like it kind of went against sort of what we were led to believe about the game. In general, she kind of felt like she wasn't as emotionally strong as she was in the game. She goes, and even after she sort of recovers and has like her breakthrough moment, she almost seems kind of like a follower rather than someone kind of leading a group or someone like I know she wasn't obviously the leader of the group, but it was kind of, I felt like it was like she wasn't really, it was just showing that she wasn't as strong as she was. And I didn't like that. I felt like Rose needs to be a strong person. I don't remember what the name was, but I noted here that the squire named Saray gives Rose his derpy. Probably something silly. And yeah, my next thing is about the whole Alicia leaving thing. I already talked about that. I do really think that focusing on her while she's in Highland and then having Saray go to Rolance with her with his crew, I think that was actually the best way to handle it. Just because I feel like it gives us a chance to kind of, because like in the game, like it seemed like she was still important to the story, but it's like she wasn't allowed to be part of the group. And I'm just like, it's okay for her to be important to the story. I just think that like we shouldn't like keep being dragged back to her. But the way they handled it in the anime, I felt like it made her story and her relevance to it more focused and just better, I think. Maltran in the game, she betrays the good guys and helps out Heldoff. And this, she's just straight up good. I don't know how I feel about that. It was kind of strange. Also, on a random note, apparently in episode 19, I wanted Lennar to lick Alicia's face when he got really close. I actually do want that, just because it would have been funny and weird. But episode 20 is when they purify a dragon, which in the game arguably wasn't possible. Personally, I'm of the mindset that it's not, like, it makes sense to me, honestly, it makes sense to me. Because one, Saray with Maltellus, at the end he was trying to purify Maltellus, who's a dragon. So it's like, I was under the impression that it's not that it was impossible, it's just that it was going to take a really long time. So I can see people's distaste for this if you want to make the argument that like, okay, well maybe it's possible, but even with their group, like it should have taken much longer. But it shouldn't have. I don't think it was necessarily that big. It didn't bother me just because I felt like Saray apparently seems to have purified Maltellus by the end of the game anyway. But then episode 21 is when things start to get really divergent, and they start to try to throw in more Berseria stuff. That was something I kind of wanted to see because, Tales of Zestiria, the cross, so. And it's even said in the final Berseria episode, like, they will cross or whatever. Myself and a lot of other fans were kind of wondering and hoping what they were going to do with the Berseria connection. It wasn't really as cool as we were. I wanted Saray and Velvet to fight. That would have been awesome. But nope. Instead, she's just in the past, serving as like they kind of try to explain it as sort of like she's like the reason for malevolence and whatnot, because she's, the Lord Calamity. Spoilers. I don't know. I guess I just wanted more. I felt like they didn't give us enough. There are apparently 2 Celestial records, as shown in episode 21. But yeah, it's after. I feel like they should have maybe included more. I think that would have been cool. Though it's cool seeing in this episode everyone coming together to like do this big thing. Like everyone wants to help us, Saray. Even apparently Hideo Baba, because I think there's this guy who shows up like this, and he says like, I'm really good at cooking, and like these like like this crew member interview kind of thing there, and the guy looks like Hideo Baba, and apparently the whole cooking thing is some sort of meme, because apparently Hideo Baba did something with cooking in Zestiria. But the guy literally looks like Hideo Baba. I will definitely put a link in the description to the screen cap that I took. And the name of the file is Baba Sama Never Left Us. Let me check. I think that's what it is. Yeah, Baba Sama Never Left Us. That's what it's called. Lol. But it was cool, kind of in touching to see everyone kind of come together. And then episode 22 is sort of where more stuff kind of happens. Simone, they seem to be kind of. I kind of got the impression that Simone was going to turn into a good guy. That was a bit of a mistake on my part. I feel like that wouldn't have entirely been against the game, because I remember in the game she was sort of like struggling as well. Though by the end she's still kind of like a bad guy, seemingly. Lunar also wanted to be a good guy, and he ends up dying. He's like, I want to be good. And they give Alicia an armatization form, an armatus form, which kind of goes along with them wanting to really make Alicia important, which I'm not really against it. I think just because of the context of this whole thing, it kind of just comes across as if like, no, we're sorry, kind of thing. But yeah, then we go to episode 23, where the gang, they go back to, I don't remember the name of the level. It's the snow town, the final snow town in Berseria, and that was cool. And Grimoire shows up as well. And the scene where Saray is kind of talking about Velvet and Artorias, that was actually kind of cool, because Velvet's theme was playing, and it felt like this weird sort of like sense of like emotional closure. Like, I don't know, like I kept thinking like it's kind of weird. It's sort of like, I guess the only way I can describe it is to go to Dragon Ball. It's sort of like watching History of Trunks and seeing that, and then going to watch the entire Trunks saga with the androids in Cell, and then watching that episode where Trunks goes back to the future and beats the living shit out of Android 17 and 18 and then Cell, like really easily. It's kind of like that, where it's just like super satisfying. It kind of gives like proper closure, that kind of thing. That's sort of how it was kind of heroic, and I don't know. It just kind of cemented why Saray is one of my favorite Tales characters and my favorite character in Zestiria. I don't know. It was cool. There was also a scene where Sergei and Groudman, I think he's an anime exclusive character. I think it would have been cool if he was a villain. He kind of looked like a villain to me. It's cool that they wanted to make him. It seemed like this anime was constantly like proving me wrong. Like, oh, Simone's gonna be good. No. Oh, Lunar is gonna lick Alicia's face. No. Though they did help me with one thing, but we'll get into that later. His final when Dezel dies, his final confession, it made it easier to kind of understand him further, and it was also cool getting to see his eyes, because his hair always kind of covers his eyes, and also his hat. That was kind of cool. And Rose, she looks cute when she wears his hat. Rose as a kid was kind of cute too, but and then we move on to episode 4, episode 24. Heldoff's motivation still seems to was still sort of like the I'm lonely kind of thing. I don't remember exactly how it was, so I can't really judge on how different it is from the game. But probably this thing of episode 24 is friggin' Saray going Super Saiyan by armatizing with everybody. That was kind of cool. And his hair's even blonder too. I like sweet. Then we get to the final episode, 25. There's a part where they play Innocence and then they go into Kazunouta. And it's when I was about to say Frieza. It's when Saray beats up Heldoff. That was kind of cool. Him wanting to die, I thought that was kind of interesting. Just because I feel like in the game, he wasn't really trying to kill himself or die or whatever. He was just being evil, and he was just kind of lonely. He was just sort of like taking out his frustration and sadness on the rest of the world, kind of like Cooler. I'm just gonna keep talking about Dragon Ball and comparing it to this anime, but the ending and final battle kind of felt a little rushed. Though it was kind of cool that Sora had to purify both Maltellus and Heldoff. But then we get to the credits. Schiller and Ian's outfits, they're kawaii desu. That military uniform dog. And also there was this funny scene of Aizen as a dragon flying by and being like, Edna, and then like flying off. It was kind of funny. There in the Edna episode of the first season, they do sort of like hint that maybe Aizen is like still has his sanity and can be human and whatnot. I kind of like that because I kind of wanted to save Aizen, honestly. Like I felt bad for killing him in my game. I know that Zestiria kind of had a theme of like sometimes you kind of have to break a few eggs to make yourself a good omelet. Which, speaking of which, there was actually an episode. Let me look back at my notes. There was a part where, it was episode 21 where like they do like this winter coat dress up thing for preparing to go into the snow area. It kind of reminded me of Eternia a little bit in like that section where like Reed and the gang have to like get snow wear to go into that mountain where what's her name? Shit, I can't remember the name of the ice summon spirit. Oh shit, that's gonna bug me. Shit. I keep wanting to say Undine, but I'm pretty sure it's not. Undine's the water one. Damn, I can't remember. This is like the Tomb of the Giants thing all over again in my Dark Souls Let's Play. I'll remember later. But yeah, it was kind of cool seeing the new designs. Rose in her new post-game anime whatever costume, she kind of looked like a Pokemon character. Like, I don't know, she looked like she was ready to go like journey in the forest or something. Alicia wears her DLC story outfit, which is nice. Also, she and Rose are totally banging. They're like, I like you too. And they sit really close to each other and whatnot. They're banging. They're hardcore. They're going to get married. Things that I could say that I won't. And it was also cool seeing Miklo in his post-credits design after seeing Saray and whatnot. Like near the end. That was kind of cool. Overall, I did like the show. I feel like the second season was a bit weaker than the first. Although they did do some stuff I liked, like giving Dezel a bit more explanation. Continuing with what they were doing with Alicia and having her sort of do her own thing while being separated from the group, while also still being relevant by switching perspective and giving her her own crew. Purifying the Dragon, I didn't really mind that. The character developments they were doing it's mainly Rose, I think, that sort of was like the culprit. Like other characters, I don't think I really cared that much. With Rose, that was the main one that kind of bothered me because, again, I felt like she was kind of strong in the game, and this show, it seemed like they were sort of taking that away a little bit. But, it is what it is, and, she kind of does go back to semi-normal again. It seems like she's more of a follower at that point. She does get a little bit of her confidence back, especially when Alicia's around. But the only other thing I can really think of is that I kind of wish they had done more with the Berseria stuff. They do a little bit. Like, Saray does have a dream where he sees Velvet, and, that's cool, I guess. But again, I really wish, like, I don't know, like Velvet came out after they defeated Hell. She's like, I'm gonna fight you now. And he's like, oh. They should have done something like that, I think. But I think that's more or less it. And also, my throat is sore, so I'm probably gonna go ahead and wrap this bad boy up. Overall, it was all right. Um, I know in the podcast episode, for the second part, I know I said that I think it's the weakest Tails anime. I don't know if I necessarily feel that way anymore. I'm not sure. And honestly, coming from me, that doesn't fucking mean shit. Like, that's like saying, to me, that's like saying, like, oh, my favorite slice of this pizza with my favorite topping on it is this one slice is my least favorite. It's like, okay, whatever. It's like my least favorite part of something I love. It's like, it means nothing. But I do think it is definitely a little weaker than the others. I don't know if it's like the weakest outright, just because one, I haven't seen some Phone yet, so I don't know. And two, it's like, again, it doesn't mean hardly anything. Honestly, I think it was okay. But yeah, I mean, I'd recommend it if you want to watch it and see for yourself. I enjoyed it, but yeah, it's bothering me. I have to look up what the summon spirit of ice is. I have to look that shit up. Celsius? Yeah, Celsius. I wanted to say Celsius, but for some reason I didn't. I'm like, is it Celsius? I don't think it's Celsius. But yeah, it's Celsius. But yeah, it was actually pretty it was alright, Not the best thing in the world. I don't know if I'd call it the worst. But yeah, that's what I think of it. We'll have to see what they do for the next Tales anime. If they do one, maybe they'll do another simulcast. We will see. But yeah, this is Flames Around, aka Tasuke, signing out. See you later.